Welcome to episode 273 of Sports Geek. On this week's episode, I discuss how the sports industry can adapt, survive, and respond to COVID-19.
Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host who looks forward to attending a game in your stadium, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. Yes, my name is Sean Callanan, and I am looking forward to attending a game in your stadium. I write all those intros for DJ Joel at various times throughout the year. When I wrote that one, I was sort of putting it out there to say I'd love to be travelling and going to different stadiums. I never thought when I wrote that intro it would be something that we're all facing, looking forward to attending a game in our own stadiums. So, as always, I'm going to discuss the thing that is affecting the whole world, not just the sports industry. I'm going to discuss that on today's podcast. If you're listening to this for the first time and looking for advice around COVID-19 and coronavirus, and you, this is not that podcast. I'm not a doctor, but I will be talking about how the sports industry can respond. You can always get me via email, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com, on socials, at Sean Callanan, at SportsGeek on most social platforms. And if you do have a question, I'm still going to continue answering your questions. You can ask them at sportsgeekhq.com/questions. Before I jump into today, I'm going to do a quick short read about our Patreon campaign. It helps support the sports business content that we do produce. You can contribute and show your support by going to sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon. I do really appreciate the people who have subscribed. I know they're doing it just as tough as I am. And if you could support in any way, I really would appreciate it. You can go to sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon. So I guess let's get stuck into it. It's, I sort of ummed and ahed about what this podcast might be and what I might discuss and what are the options, but I guess I'll just give you my point of view on what it's been like in my world. It may be similar and may be different. Literally last Friday, we were at the opening of Fortress, Melbourne, in Emporium here, an esports and gaming bar that we'd been working with the guys at Emporium to open. That opening happened at 10 o'clock last Friday, and then I was going to be headed to a day at the Grand Prix with the guys at Motorsport Australia, which was just the day before. The evening previous, we were at Sports Business Melbourne, and we had a meet-up at the Corner Hotel. I think it was about 15 of us talking a little bit about coronavirus and where it might land. It was effectively a day after the NBA had decided to postpone. It hit 11 o'clock after opening Fortress and letting people in the doors, and then the Grand Prix was cancelled. And over the last 7 to 9 days, we've seen pretty much the world starting to grind to a halt due to coronavirus. Unfortunately for the guys at Fortress, they closed their doors 5 days after opening, which is really disappointing. But that's pretty much the reality for every business that are non-essential. So I'm recording this on Sunday. The Victorian government here has just ordered a shutdown of all non-essential businesses. And the AFL, Gil McLachlan just reported the cancellation of the AFLW season and the suspension of the AFL season. And so it hurts. It's going to hurt a lot of people. There's a lot of industries that are affected. Obviously, those of you who are listening that are in the sports industry, it's terribly affected. It's affecting tourism, events, conferences and those kind of things have all been postponed. Charities the same. They might have had gatherings and those kind of things and big key fundraisers planned in the next 4 to 6 months, they're at jeopardy. The arts community, I have a lot of friends that are in the arts community. The Melbourne International Comedy Festival that was recently cancelled, that's where a lot of comedians get their big bump for the year. So they've been affected. Recruitment, people aren't going to be hiring, and they're going to put a freeze on jobs and not hiring people, despite the government trying to put in support for people. And as I said before, hospitality, anyone who owns a coffee shop or a bar and those kind of things, everyone is affected. So it's, this isn't a woe is me podcast, because everyone is in the shit. Everyone. And we all need to pull together to help each other to get out to the other side of this, whenever that is. So I'm hearing politicians using the phrase, a bridge to see us to the other side. Yes, I understand there's probably spin masters and PR folk that have given them that phrase, building a bridge, getting a bridge to the other side. But really, we do need to build a bridge. We do need to do that together and get together to do that. As I mentioned, the AFL season's just been put on hold, and I did really. Gil McLachlan, the AFL CEO, mentioned that we need to be agile, flexible, and united, which I completely agree with, and I think it's something we have to do as an industry and support each other, knowing that. Yes, everyone is affected. You're affected. People you work with are affected. Their families are affected. Everyone is affected by this. So what I want to do is highlight how I can help and how I can play a part in being that builder of the bridge. So for my case, digital to dollars has never been more important. Usually when we're doing it, it's a slow, considered, practical approach to build upon what your digital teams are already doing and already delivering to deliver more results and more commercial value to your partners. And normally it's working with your digital teams, working with your commercial teams to get them to work together to ensure that the great digital content that is being created is partnered and attributed back to sponsors and make sure that the sponsors are seeing that value. I can't do it that way now. We're in a different time. We're in a different time frame. We're in a different world. And so we have to fast track that process. Normally that process takes 6 weeks to 2 months to, in some cases, years to start getting it right. But we have to fast track it. And so why do we have to fast track it? Well, like I just said, we're in a new world, and we've got to figure out how to work in that new world. But also right now we have sponsorship dollars in sports and in all industries. Arts is facing the same problems, but sponsorship dollars overall are under severe threat. This year, very much so, because no games makes it hard to deliver on all of the required deliverables in your current sponsorship contracts. The second point is the businesses that are the sponsors, the brands that are sponsoring, a lot of them are now looking to save costs, and they will cut sponsorship dollars where they can. So that's the first. So sponsorship dollars are under severe threat. So we need to figure out how we can best deliver for those sponsors and retain as much of that sponsorship dollar that we have currently already acquired, and how much we can retain this year. That's a real strong focus, and it should be a strong focus for every chief commercial officer. It'll be the question that the CEO will be asking. How do we keep those sponsorship dollars that you've already secured? They're hard-earned. How do we keep them? The second reason we have to fast-track something like digital to dollars, digital teams will be put under more stress and pressure to deliver now more than ever. Okay? There's going to be more fans screaming for content and connection now than when games are playing, especially now that there are no games being played. They want to feel that connection with their team, with their club, now more than ever. And on top of that, the digital teams, which we know are already stretched. Like, I've done the content reviews. I've reviewed what content teams and digital teams are producing. I know how stretched they are now. They're going to be asked to deliver more. They're going to be asked to engage with fans more. And they're going to be asked by the commercial teams to produce more content that then can go back to the sponsors, to deliver some more value to the sponsors, because they're missing out on their match day and hospitality options. So your digital teams are going to be under more stress and more strain, and resources will be really stretched. Now, I've joked in the past and on this podcast and in workshops that for a long time I've been a digital divorce counsellor. Getting teams working together, getting digital and commercial and your data teams working together. Now, that's never been more important. Okay, and it's actually never been harder to do, because now everyone is working from home. So it's harder to do. Now, it's not saying that people aren't doing a good job. Like, I'm seeing some terrific innovation from digital teams that are scrambling to innovate to connect with sports star fans on social media. And they're trying new things, and they're doing different initiatives on different content platforms to give the fans access and to feel connected with the fans and engage the fans, which is great. I love that. But I am seeing, but how do we then connect those great initiatives and be agile and nimble enough to connect those great initiatives to sponsors? Can we provide that flexibility? Can we get everyone in the room? Can we get that loop closed? Because on the other side of the business, the commercial teams are reviewing contracts and trying to find ways to deliver some of the value that COVID-19 has ripped away. Normal sponsorship would have match day, TV exposure, hospitality, fan events, digital. Digital's the only one left. It's the only one still available. So digital is the option that needs to be pushed harder. And we really do need the process of, hey, we've got this cool idea we want to do. It'll engage our fans. We reckon they'll love it. How do we get a sponsor involved in that? What is the process? How do we fast track that sponsor process? How do we say, we're going to do this, it's timely, the fans want it, we're going to do it now? Which sponsor is going to be associated with this piece of content so we can add that to the deliverables? Like, we're in make good territory right now. So how do we improve that process to be able to go back to our sponsors and say, these are the things we delivered? So some resources that are available to you now. The first 3 pillars of digital to dollars and explaining what that process is available in podcast form. Right, so I've already done digital to dollars, know your audience. I did that back in January. So you can learn more about who you currently engage with, who should you be engaging with, and how can you learn more about them? You might now find an audience that you haven't engaged with. Like, that's key. You want to be finding and engaging with all your audiences and doing it in a segmented manner. You can check out the Know Your Content podcast from February, where I sort of dive into how we do a content review, which is vital now. Like, what content were you going to produce that can't be produced now? You can't have a highlight dunk or a goal of the week if there are no games. That is now off the list of content you're producing. So what are the new content pieces? How are they going to be developed? With or without games? With or without players? How are you going to do that? One of the other things we also do in the content piece is, how do we make sure we extend the life of every piece of content we do? If your resources are stretched, you don't want to have these little one-shot wonders. You want to figure out a way to get multiple plays, multiple interactions off the same piece of content, making it stretch, making it last a little bit longer. And then just last month, Feb 24, I did digital to dollars, know your distribution. So how are you now going to change the way you interact on your social media channels? What digital channels can you leverage now and grow and integrate with your partners that you probably weren't going to do? What does Instagram Live look like? What does Facebook Live look like? How are you going to tackle TikTok? How can you use those platforms, which primarily might be completely new assets that are coming online for you and your brand and your team? If they're new assets, then you can be talking back to your partners to say, this is what we're doing. We want you to be part of that. So there's some resources. If you haven't listened to those episodes, they will give you some tips on how we go about the digital to dollars process, how it works and why it works. I don't want this whole podcast to be dark cloud, which it does feel like in the world right now. There is a dark cloud of this coronavirus, but I'm still upbeat, and I'm remaining upbeat. I'm remaining glass half full, even though it has been a really tough week. I think it's probably been the toughest week at Sports Geek in 11 years, and I think it's been a tough week for the industry. I'm tough to find another sort of time that I think the industry has really been hit overall and globally. But why am I upbeat? I'm upbeat because the fans will return in droves into stadiums. The cheeks on the seats will happen again. So we will see a definite uptick in ticketing, memberships, show rates, people turning up to watch live sport. I have no doubt that, absence makes the heart grow fonder, and especially coming out of 3, 6, may even be 12 months of isolation, hibernation, whatever we end up calling it. Fans will want to be in a stadium and see sport live. So we need to prepare for that. The other reason I'm upbeat is broadcasters will truly now know the value of live sport. No theories, no posturing, no Mexican standoff between broadcasters and rights holders. With no live sport, TV will know what live sport means, which should see an unexpected bump, or at least the values of current TV rights to hold when most would have probably expected them to drop. I also think this will force sports to look at their broadcast model and start looking at how they can better leverage and better carve off their own rights and how they can produce those rights and how they can present those rights to fans, whether it be better leveraging the archives, those kind of things. I think the broadcast picture will be for the better coming out of this crisis. Another reason I am still upbeat for the sports business industry, there is a lot of service providers to sports that are hurting right now and will hurt that can help. Right? I am amongst them, admittedly, and I've seen the social media posts from people working on the team side or the league side, getting annoyed that they're working from home and trying to figure out what this crisis looks like, and they've been getting emails and calls from potential vendors saying, hey, I've got this tool, I've got this fan engagement solution. This is how we can talk to fans not in this that you're not talking to right now. As I stated earlier, everyone is hurting. And I do believe a new normal will develop out of this crisis. And the old way of we always do it this way potentially might be a casualty, which I think is good. So I think a little bit of balance is required on both sides in reaching out to teams. I know it's something that I've, especially this week, knowing how tough it is to be either running a team or running a league that is trying to get games going or is still struggling and coming to terms with games not operating, which, remember, this is a 7-day-old problem to a certain degree for the world of sport. So I deliberately haven't done that reach out to people. I've been talking to clients and working with them on what they can do in this space, but I haven't pushed really hard to reach out to people. But if you are a business or a technology that wants to be part of the solution and you think you're part of the solution, if not now, if not, hey, I can help you now in this break and help you in a certain way in this break with no games and those kind of things, yes, I'd love to hear from you. But if you think you're part of the solution when we get back on track, I'd love to hear from you. I'm going to work on a project that's going to help more of the sports business industry know what options are out there. So if you're in a B2B solution, if you've got a tool or a technology in a way to help sport going forward, I'd love to hear from you and love to work in a way that we can help offer that solution. And the other reason that I'm really upbeat is there's so many talented people in the industry. The unfortunate thing is some of these people have already lost their jobs or will lose their jobs or won't get any shifts. So we've heard all the conversation about the people who work on game day and they work in concession and they work at stadiums when games aren't being played. But there's people in production, there's people in game day, there's people in media. So if you have skills in content production, whether you're a journalist, you're a video editor, you're an on-air talent, you're a podcast editor, you're an interviewer, you're a graphic artist, there will be work for you. The demand for sports content hasn't gone away. That's one of the things that COVID-19 hasn't taken away. Fans still want that content. I was speaking to my brother who works in the infrastructure space and trying to get my head around, I guess, this whole crisis, which is facing everybody. And because he's in infrastructure, he works with a lot of hospitals. And he was pretty much saying that the hospitals are building for the crisis ahead. They know they're going to need people to handle the demand. They're recruiting people because they know those resources and those people won't be available at some point in time. My thinking is digital teams will need help. They might not be hiring full-time people, but they will be needing assistance. They will need assistance to fulfill the increased demand. If a digital team is currently at capacity and is going to be asked to do twice as much, that's not physically possible. So again, I have a lot of faith and I am upbeat about the people that are available, both in the world of sport, but then also, as I spoke about before, there's lots of talented people in the world of arts and content producers out of that space that don't have any work because event centres and arts festivals and comic festivals have been shut down. So if you're one of these talented people that's going to struggle over the next 6 months because you don't have a job, you don't have a permanent job, or the freelance work that you were getting is going to stop, please reach out. I'm going to work on a way to better connect you as people to the opportunities that might be. And hopefully, like I'm always of the belief that if you hang around with smart, creative people, cool things happen. And so if we get enough of these people, who knows what we can help build, develop, and help as I said before, help the sports industry build that bridge. Okay, so that's a little bit of where I think things are at, why I'm still upbeat. So here's the pitch. You know how the sports industry is worried for its very future as no games are being played. Well, what we do is help teams increase digital output with a focus on partner outcomes. In fact, we're proud to be here since the beginning of the sports digital age. We don't plan on stopping now when sports needs sports geeks now more than ever. Right? I remember a time when no one had a digital department and teams were starting to use social media. And I'm really proud to see so many people working in this industry and producing content and engaging fans and selling tickets and selling memberships and getting people into the stands. We built a really terrific platform. And so now let's really leverage it. So what does digital to dollars fast track look like? So one of the things is we've got to flip the model. This is not a time to follow the script as you always have. I've spoken about it before. If you've listened to the podcast before, you will have heard me go through the process. Know your audience, know your content, know your distribution, know your value, know your pitch. But in this case, we need to flip the model because it's operation save sponsor revenue. So we start with know your pitch. So it starts with a review sponsored by sponsor to assess the deliverables. And let's look for digital upside. What are the new content and new campaigns we can deliver to recover the lost deliverables? How can we cover the lost match day sponsorship? How can we recover the loss of hospitality tickets for games that aren't being played? That's the first part. Look for those opportunities to get uplift from digital. Then we look at know your value. Assess how digital has been valued. Ensure that all options that you've got available, and especially the new ones, most likely we're going to do things on new platforms. They might not have values and rate cards. So we need to review your rate card, update it if needed, but then also look at what these new platforms might be valued at if we're going to pitch new things to the to a partner and go back to them and say, this is what we're now doing. Which dives into know your distribution. What platforms just rose in attention and value? More people are looking at Twitter. Does that mean it's more valuable? Instagram Live, are we doing more things on that? Is it now the time to start playing around with TikTok? How do we do it? How do we assign partners to that type of content? And then one of my favorites, what innovation can you steal with pride? What are other teams doing? How can we lift each other up? Because we don't have to be first in doing something. We just have to be the first to be doing something to our fans. So if one team in the US is doing something well, it can be done here because you're talking to your fans. You're not talking to their fans. You're talking to your fans. So it's really about looking at what platforms you've now got available and how you best leverage them in this time. Then diving in, know your content. Review the content that was to be produced. What content have you just straight out lost? What content strands are no longer available? We can't do dunk of the night. We can't do goal of the week because we don't have that content. And then if we are producing content, how can we stretch every single pixel out of that content to make sure it's being seen by as many people as possible? What new content initiatives should we undertake with the restrictions that we've got? Like restrictions sometimes create creativity and innovation. We don't have access to the game footage. We don't have access to the players. What do we have access to? It's very much like currently going to the supermarkets where you go to the supermarkets to potentially get some more food and half of the supermarkets are empty. So you might get a protein. You might get some chicken because chicken's the only thing that's there. You might get some potatoes because there are potatoes there, but there's no salad. And you end up making the dish based on what is available. We're very much in that space for know your content. And then the last is, what is the opportunity in knowing our audience? Like diving in and understanding who we're talking to, how engaged they are. Every time we do this exercise with the team, we always find audiences that they don't realise that they have. They are super valuable at this time. If you can go back to a sponsor and say, well, actually, teenagers, as an example, are super engaged with our content on this platform. We only found that out. Or we would like to produce this content series for them. Here's the data that says they will really like it. Would you like us to be partnering with you to producing that content series? We always find a couple of really audiences of opportunity is what we call them in the workshop. So what could we find from that? So that's reversing the model, starting with the problem. The problem is, how do we save them money? How do we make sure that we deliver as much as we can to claw back as much of that, much of those deliverables and promises that we'd offered earlier? So if you've been thinking of hiring me or working through the digital to dollars, I'd love to talk to you right now. Wherever you may be in the world, it's a global problem, and I'm happy to be working with anybody, especially, as I said, people who listen to this podcast. I want to help you get to the other side. This strategy will not only give your team direction and purpose for the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, but it will set your team up for the eventual return of your sport. So we might be doing work right now that actually sets up a digital content explosion once your sport hits go. This isn't a strategy to go, cool, we're going to churn out a stack of content because we should turn out a stack of content. This might be 3 to 6 months of preparation to make hay while the sun shines when the sport gets back on its feet. So it's setting up for that, getting that strategy in place, right? Normally when we're doing the digital dollar strategy, it's about, hey, how can we secure more money for partners? How can we go and get some of their campaign money? How can we come get some of their activation money? That's a down the track opportunity right now. This is a how do we stabilize everything right now? So we're going to be offering the digital dollars fast track option for a 50% discount for the next 6 months. So please reach out. It's going to be held completely online via Zoom meetings using Google Documents, Google Sheets, Google Docs, all online. We'll help your team adjust to working from home, helping them understand how to deliver awesome digital campaigns, I should say, to partners. And I'll be available to work with your partners to deliver what you have to them and hopefully deliver campaigns they want. Because remember, like I said before, everyone's feeling the pain. So your partner might be an airline and no one's flying. Your partner might run events and there's no events happening. It might be a resort and no one's turning up. So they're feeling the pain as well, and they have less options to market their services. So what are the options? How can you help them? I will have access, hopefully via this, to talent as we recruit freelancers and content creators to be able to meet the increased demand. So again, if you're being displaced or you're looking for work, you think you can help, you want to be part of this, there'll be links on sportsgeekhq.com to be part of it. Because when the go gets hit, when the green button go, everyone wants to working on new projects, you'll need more people to do it. So what does that look like? I want to be able to help you in that space. And yes, it has been a conversation over the last 7 days. If you want to push into esports and gaming, we can help you build that out as well. But again, it's a longer term thing. It's not a quick fix. We'll be doing some stuff in the gaming esports space, and at the moment, I'm really grateful that our team Gravitas is still playing, but that could change at any moment. So I'm going to make the links for this podcast really easy. It's going to be on the front page. If you go to sportsgeekhq.com, there will be options. If you're interested in getting digital to dollars to help set your team up for COVID-19 and beyond, let's set up a time to chat. I'm happy to talk to you through the steps that we'll go through. Happy to talk to yourself. Happy to talk to your chief commercial officer. I'm happy to talk to your CEO. To really set yourself up to be able to deliver in that compressed schedule that eventually and potentially will restart, whether that's June, July, August, September, whenever that is, there will be a real strong expectation for your team to deliver well and above what you've expected to be delivering previously. So go to sportsgeekhq.com for that. If you have a sports business to business or a tech business and you want to walk alongside me and help sports find a way to the other side of COVID, please reach out, get involved. As I said, I've got an idea and a project that I think can help you rise above the clutter and present your solution. I'd love to help. I'm in the same position. And then lastly, if you are someone working in sports, is out of work or displaced due to COVID-19, and you'd love to still work in sports and you're ready and willing to work, again, please reach out. Go to Sports Geek HQ, register the details. I want to be able to connect you with those work opportunities. Potentially, I want to work with you and make it easier for you to connect with your next gig. So that's it from me. That's the pitch. Now is the time to make digital to dollars happen for you and your team. You can go to sportsgeekhq.com for all the links to this episode and all the links to the options that I provided there. Please stay safe. Please wash your hands. And I wish all of you safety and hopefully, and I'm still upbeat that we are all laughing and enjoying ourselves at a sports conference, at a bar some point, and having a beer and saying that we survived. Because I do think the sports industry is resilient. One of my life mottos is definitely around resilience. I've spoken about the Angela Duckworth's book, Grit. If you are looking for something to read that gives you some lift in your spirits and understanding grit, you can either watch Angela Duckworth's TED Talk, but I highly recommend her book on grit. I believe I've got a lot of grit. Like I said, I've been here from the beginning. I'm not going anywhere, and I want to see us get to the other side of this. Look forward to talking to you on any of the platforms. Sean at Sports Geek HQ, please reach out if I can help you in any way. And yeah, that's it. That's it. It's going to be a real slog for the next 12 months. It's going to be a real slog. But the thing is, people aren't in sports business. People in sports business are in it. They're hard workers. They don't back away from a challenge. And I think we're all going to be inspired by what everyone is doing across multiple sports around the world to see all sports get back on its feet. So that's it from me. Appreciate you listening. Appreciate you listening to this far and for all time listening. My name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
Join Sports Geek Nation access to exclusive Slack and Facebook groups with regular Q&A sessions with Sean Callanan. Go to sportsgeeknation.com to join. Got a question for Sean? Send it in for our Sports Geek Q&A series. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/questions.
Go to sportsgeekhq.com for more sports digital marketing resources.